Hi guys, welcome back to episode 13 of Chaz's No Bullshit Reptile Advice. Today's question or query comes from Casey Camenzuli. I hope I pronounced that correctly. One topic I can't seem to find properly sourced material on is inbreeding. In your opinion, as a prospective keeper, how concerned should I be about this? My searches lead to speculation and conjecture of forum commentators. I would just be another forum commentator. I can give you my opinion on it gladly, but how much more informed it would be than others, I don't know. When it comes to inbreeding, one thing we know for certain is it's been going on for years, whether it's been to lock in genes. So let's take, for example, the first albino corn snake is found in the middle of Florida or Carolina, and it's taken home. And we've got other wild collected normal corns. Now we know that this albino is different, but straight off the bat we don't know how the genetics work. So whoever bred them would have crossed them to their wild types. Every resultant baby that was born will have been retained because we didn't know what was going on with the genes, because everything was born looking normal, assuming that there wasn't a het there to be exposed in the normal looking corn. So inbreeding then immediately takes place, because they'll either backbreed the resultant babies to mum or dad once they're up to age, or they'll breed them to one another to get the albinos out. This is the case with essentially every gene, because unless it's a pre-proven gene, every time the original gene was found, it's then had to be inbred to be locked in. And in the royal pythons, potentially even more so, to try and expose the supers, so they will do it back to a visual to see if there's a second step to a gene. Pastel to super pastel, ivory to not ivory, yellow belly to ivory, Mahave butter, Vin Russo, and lesser together to produce blue-eyed leucistic in any which form, fire to create black-eyed leucistics. So inbreeding is very much a piece of our history. This in turn can make weak lines, weak animals. Also, if we're dealing with small gene pools, so the amount of animals within a population, you know, if we start thinking about really rare stuff, invariably most of them are going to be related. And back in the mid-90s, olive pythons were coming through, a lot of them with tiny eyes. The eyes were formed, but the socket size was tiny, so you could just see the eye. There was also in British albino boas way back in the late 90s, albino boas, a lot of them were being born with one eye. And again, until fresh blood came through to widen the gene pool, this potentially is because brother was being bred to sister, or son to mother, daughter to father, so that sort of thing. You can't carry on ad nauseum. Generally, I think they say that the real congenital defects will start from second generation onwards. So that's worth bearing in mind. Whereas I think with rats and mice, they go something like 100 generations deep. It's crazy. And the sort of filial breeding is and maternal or paternal backbreeding as part of their social groups is actually normal. But with the reptiles, it leads to all sorts of problems. But then, I mean, the genes can wreak havoc in amongst themselves, and whether it's an enlarged heart, shrunken heart, an enlarged liver, the kinking, deformities of the jaw, there's all sorts of things going on. So it certainly doesn't help our case. I mean, because incubation can create these issues as well as the genes, and finding that we've gone too far and done too much with a certain thing. And obviously we know that we've got these bad genes, these enigmas, spiders, jaguars, etc., that create problems of their own. So as a prospective keeper, how worried should you be about inbreeding? If you are buying a commonly accepted beginner species and you're not spending thousands of dollars or pounds on that animal, then I wouldn't worry. It's when you start getting to a situation where we are spending untold thousands on rarity, the pool of animals available to be bred from is going to be incredibly small. The same way that an exceedingly select gene, again, will be from a small pool, and more than likely to have locked in that gene, the history of inbreeding would potentially be of a higher level. If it was just buying a normal corn, the likelihood of them putting brother and sister together, I believe, is lower. I have no proof. This is conjecture, exactly the same as you'd get online. And those lower level animals, I think, are less likely. Probably bucking the trend with that is bearded dragons, because there's a pain in the arse situation where idiots sell 2 beardies to a Viv 2-4, and invariably they're going to be brother and sister, assuming that they're not both brothers, and kick the crap out of one another, and then they will breed. So there's the potential there with beardies. Potentially they would be a greater risk than other things. Hopefully, I mean, if you've got the common sense to be asking about inbreeding, you wouldn't buy 2 animals from the same breeder anyway. That kind of goes without saying, so maybe that's a moot point. But I'm thinking on my feet. I haven't really prepared for this, but if you'd come in and ask me this question, Casey, this is kind of how I'd approach answering it. Invariably, the shops, we buy litters, so we have to be straight with people. Yeah, they're related. And that's down to then what people want to do from there. I think that I would almost certainly recommend not breeding, knowingly inbreeding anyway. Brothers and sisters, the genes are proven, the stuff that we're buying and keeping. I'm not treading new ground, breaking ice, setting records. I'm just a pet shop owner, so the stuff that I keep isn't super rare. So it's okay, you know, to not have to lock in a gene. Gene's already been locked in. You want a gene, go and do this, or buy your next one. And then we're talking about $100 snakes, $200 snakes, not $15,000, $20,000 snakes, if there's such a thing still around, seeing as that bubble seems to have burst somewhat. But yeah, it's an interesting question. Inbreeding has happened for years, will continue to happen for years. Congenital defects are as a result. You would see those at the point of purchase. Usually any animals that are born with significant congenital defects will fail and will die in a relatively short space of time. Malformed heads or jaws, they're evident, affect feeding. Kidneys and hearts are a bit more of a problem, like blood pressure builds with the hearts and then eventually they have a heart attack, but that's once their body reaches a certain mass. Kinking's obvious and can become worse with time, and just because you have a kink on the outside that you can see, you don't know how serious that kink is on the inside. And as they get older, kinks do get more severe as the bone grows and adds mass. It becomes more erratic in shape and irregular, and it can affect bowel movement, bolus movement as it enters the tract and moves down to the stomach. So there are a few issues there. My advice would be to go to a trustworthy breeder, to go to someone with a good reputation. People who pull dodgy shit get found out. This hobby is relatively good for karma. A few people will be aware of, there's a Facebook group for one of the biggest breeders, producers in the US, that is the people against so-and-so, and it's got thousands of members. People who pull dodgy shit get found out. Now, it's to be hoped that if you're going to someone with a decent reputation, wonderful. If you're going to a breeder, ask to see the parents, discuss the history of the animals, and if you have any doubts, then don't buy. But as far as cast iron advice regarding inbreeding, totally eradicating it, it not being part of the hobby, never happen. Either the gene pool's too small and you're dealing with rarity, and subsequent generations will be bought in pairs because the opportunity to buy an albino black-headed python from any other source is impossible. So I need a pair. as much as everyone's going to be like, it's the fucking truth. Wake up. Like, you know, how do you think that all these people all over the world have continued producing these genes? They'll outbreed them, create some hets, but then those hets will come back in. So like creating half new blood. But Jesus, this has been happening for decades and decades and decades. And it's how the genes are locked in. So it is what it is. Is it perfect? Is it good? No. Will you ever get shot of it? No. It's one of those where you just have to probably be slightly philosophical about it. It happens. To be able to guarantee the genealogy and the history and the family and paternity of your animals, you're going to really struggle, I think. I don't think many people keep that kind of detail or would be forthcoming with that detail. Find somebody trustworthy where there's a history of high quality animals, where they're sourcing them from high quality sources. I have taken years to carefully pick the people that I buy my animals from. I have a network of breeders throughout the UK who I trust. Particularly one springs to mind with the leopard geckos. We have a nasty problem in the UK with cryptosporidium, which is passed through collections like a dose of salts. So I took my time to find a source where these geckos are clean, healthy, they grow well, they're not developing this little pencil tail problem and dying. We don't have those issues because I exclusively use his animals. And I trust him. I've never had the brass neck to say to him, how inbred are your animals? Because he'd probably tell me to fuck off. But I trust that his judgment is as is, and the animals are of high quality. You probably do run the risk somewhat of aggravating people if we start asking those sorts of questions, but that's your bag, that's up to you. It's your choice, your animal. If you want to ask, you ask. It's that's completely down to you, nothing to do with me. But yeah, I think that go to big breeder, go to somebody who knows what they're doing, go to someone with a good reputation, ask as many questions as you need to ask to feel comfortable, and then from there it's all your choice. So we'll keep coming. I am working on what I've got to help somebody who's got animals that are sitting in a water bowl. That answer is coming. It's too much of a big project to do now. I've got this green tree project coming, so I'm working on that, and hopefully I'll be bringing that to fruition towards the end of the weekend. So I'll see you all soon. Cheers.